Jonathan Givony and Bobby Marks here of ESPN. We're here to talk about the USA Basketball Junior National Team mini camp that I just attended in Colorado Springs this past weekend. Bobby, the big topic everybody in the gym wanted to talk about was the NBA age limit, and specifically when it's going to go away, and if are we going to see NBA teams drafting players that were in this exact gym. There were high school freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So anywhere from the 2024 to the 2027 draft, depending on when this age limit might go away. I'd love to hear more from you. You've got great relationships in the league office as well as with the NBA Players Association. What are you hearing about, when this age limit might go away, if at all?
It's funny. We were texting on Tuesday night about doing this video. Because you have this article that's out on ESPN.com. So I said, you know what, let me just text some teams and say, how important is the age limit to you as far as in the next CBA? And the unanimous answer was not. It's not important at all here. I think there's probably more things, and I know certainly we've heard the commissioner talk about it. I think it's important to the commissioner. I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that the commissioner works for the 30 teams. I think there's other things to tackle when it comes to the next collective bargaining agreement. I think Jonathan, that how teams view it right now, that the setup right now is perfect, right? Where you have the G League Ignite as that feeder program for players that are juniors, players that are seniors in high school. You look at what overtime has done also in Atlanta here, and in the league, and the teams are looking at like what's wrong with how it is right now, where that's a developmental tool for Jalen Green, for Dyson Daniels to go and work out and play against NBA competition, during the season, whether it be teams from Sioux Falls or Long Island, and you're going to get the more hand. I mean, that's as you saw out in Henderson last week with against the Victor's team. The G League team is staffed, right? Like they have it's like a 1-to-1 player to coach ratio.
It's like an NBA team.
Yeah,
the resources that they're putting in.
You're going to get the full developmental experience here. And I think, you had a line in your article where you said there was two GMs out in Colorado Springs, Sam Presti and Bobby Webster, right? To go look at the next wave of up and coming players. And I think if teams were more serious about scouting high school players and scouting juniors here, you would have seen 28 teams or 29 teams in the gym here. So I don't, just from talking from teams, it's not the number one priority on their wish list when we're looking at this next collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, definitely. Teams have very little interest in going back to high school gyms. It's hard enough to get the draft right. When you're scouting Duke and Kentucky, let alone, these far-flung places in Mississippi and Alabama where, it's one elite prospect playing with 9 other guys who might not play Division I basketball. That's a very, very difficult evaluation. What are you hearing regarding what the union is saying? They're going to, if Adam Silver is going to come to the bargaining table in these conversations for the new collective bargaining agreement and say, I want to do away with the age limit, the people that he's negotiating with is the NBA Players Association, which is essentially the 450 or whatever players that are in the NBA, their representatives. What do you think is going to be their reaction to because Adam Silver obviously does want the NBA age limit to go away?
I think the reaction would be, what else are you looking for? Right. I think that's the big thing. I mean, from a draft perspective, there's still going to be 60 players drafted in the first 2 rounds, whether it be college players, international, or high school players, G League Ignite players here. I mean, it's not changing here unless all of a sudden we say the draft is going to expand to 3 rounds and it's going to cost NBA players their jobs, right? We always say this every year, is that every year 50 players out of the 60 are going to make an NBA roster, and it's going to cost a veteran their job. Like, there's no way to get around that. But I think certainly from a player's perspective, and certainly from an agent's perspective, and you hit on it, is like the draft process is one of the few areas where the agents control the process. So if you're the NBA and you said, we want high school players, seniors to be eligible, but we also want, that every player has to go to the combine, that all medicals have to be shared amongst teams. I think the Players Association, I think certainly the agents are going to be like, well, wait a minute, like what else are we getting? Right? Like it doesn't do us any good to allow the age limit to be eliminated. And then we also have to make all these different concessions where, a top two player who's projected to go number 2 has to go to the combine now, has to give up their medicals. And we've seen it year after year where, players, whether it be, Jaren Jackson's a great example. We saw this, I don't even know, 4 years ago, where he didn't share his medicals with certain teams here. And I think if the agents, I think that's certainly, I think for the Player Association, I think that's probably a red flag where you're not going to give up something like that unless you're going to get a very nice concession back, right? Whether it be maybe there's the player, the percentage of BRI increases as far as which is basketball related income that they can receive. The cap's going to go up no matter what because of the revenue that's going to come in from the TV money eventually here. So from a PA standpoint, I would think it would certainly be a non-starter if you're going to have to give up those type of concessions.
Yeah, the union is going to want a bigger piece of the pie here, which is going to be a very difficult negotiation with the owners. The last collective bargaining agreement negotiation, that was really the number one topic that they were discussing. Is it going to be 51%, 52%, 49, 48? What's the split there? So if the NBPA is going to say, we want a bigger piece of the pie in exchange for eliminating the age limit and also giving up full NBA combine participation, control of player medicals, I mean, is that something that owners are going to be interested in? Because what, GMs, presidents, owners, head coaches are telling me, they think that eliminating the age limit, reducing the requirement to be 18 years old as opposed to 19 is going to water down the level of the NBA. You're going to have a much younger league. You're going to have players who don't have that 1 year of college basketball experience or playing overseas. They're also not going to be as marketable. Like if you look at this upcoming draft, Victor Wembanyama, if there were no age limit, he would have been in last year's draft in 2022. He is not even 1% as marketable a year ago as he is today after playing those 2 games in Las Vegas. Zion Williamson, he would have been in the draft coming out of high school. He probably would have been, I don't know, the 6th or 7th pick. That 1 year at Duke created such a huge buzz, such a wave of anticipation. Also, was a game changer for him in terms of the sneaker deal that he signed with Jordan Brand. So, how attractive is that going to be to NBA owners? And especially, like the owners are going to listen to their GMs, to their president, to the executives. These guys do not want the age limit going away. And so how much is Adam Silver going to have to listen to them when it comes down to time to actually negotiate this? And as you're saying, this is not going to be the number one topic of conversation for them in labor discussions.
No, you're right. I mean, I lived through the 90s as great of success stories of Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett and Tracy McGrady, players that were drafted out of high school. Like, there were horror shows. I mean, there were a ton of guys that never, ever made it, and we never even heard from them. And then those 3 players I just mentioned, like, it took a while. Like, it took, Kobe didn't just come into the league and was putting up, 25, 26 points. Like, it took a while here. And I think going back to your point from a marketability standpoint, like Scoot Henderson, if Scoot Henderson a year ago, like we saw Scoot Henderson in the G League showcase and you saw him a ton, like he was really good. But Scoot Henderson's at a different level right now, right? Like he's at a different level going based on another year of development here. So I just think like if the PA goes back and says, you know what, instead of 50% BRI, it's a 50-50 split, we want 55% now. Like the league's probably going to say, well, we'll address the age issue for another day here. But yeah, I mean, just going back to it, I just think there are so many other things to address, whether it be the extension rules, whether it be, player empowerment, I'm sure the hard cap, that I'm sure owners want, as far as to deal with some of these luxury tax issues with Golden State and the Clippers, where the age limit is it's a non-factor. It should be a non-factor for these teams.
So why do you think, Adam Silver is on the record. He said this past July that changing the age limit is the right thing to do. And he pointed to societal changes, that have occurred and have caused him to change his opinion. He used to be a proponent of making it 2 years out of college, making it 20 being, the minimum age limit to entering the draft. But he's saying that, he's hopeful that this is a change that we can make in the next CBA cycle, and that it's going to happen in the next few years. Does he have the cachet to do this one? And why do you think he's so adamant on doing away with the age limit when, the union's not hot on it? The players that are in the league are not that hot on it. Owners aren't hot on it. Executives aren't hot on it. Agents, we'll see. I mean, they probably do want this. What do you think is the reasoning for this?
I think the big reason, Jonathan, is that the league is better prepared for it now compared to where they were in the 90s. I mean, back in, when Kobe was drafted, there was no G League team to go to. There was no development. You were basically with the parent club the whole way. I mean, the developmental system, it wasn't strong at all. I mean, you basically had 3 or 4 assistant coaches here. And I think where the commissioner looks at it, like, we have a great structure in place with the G League Ignite, whether it be players working out there or with, individual, basically every NBA team, except for, I think maybe Phoenix might be the only one that does not have a G League team, where the structure is there, where staffs have expanded. So if you do draft a player coming out of high school, like, he's not going to be that forgotten player. Like, there is more of an emphasis than it was back in the I guess in the mid 90s here, from not just on the court, but basically kind of teaching from a life skills standpoint. I mean, that's the biggest thing as far as, traveling on the road. And we're in a little bit of a different age. And I think the commissioner looks at other leagues, whether it be, and it's probably more of the independent sports, right? It's the independent sports, whether it be golf, whether it be tennis, where there's really not much of an age limit. But going back to, does he have the power? Yeah. I mean, the commissioner is powerful, but at the end of the day, like, this is going to be something that's bargained and taken into account with, the teams, the ownership group here.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get the moral and ethical, reasons why 18-year-olds should be allowed into the NBA. I mean, if you're old enough to vote, you're old enough to play in the NBA. If you're old enough to be drafted into the army and die for your country, then yeah, you're probably ready to play in the NBA. You could own a firearm, like when you're 18. You could do a lot of things when you're 18 years old. So that cutoff of 19 does feel a little bit arbitrary. My question is, there's been a lot of changes in youth basketball here at the amateur level since this topic came about in 2018, 2019. Players are now able to earn significant amount of money in college. We saw Paolo Banchero earn multiple millions of dollars at Duke last year. We're seeing guys like Oscar Tshiebwe and Drew Timme, 7-figure deals in NIL. Guys are going to G League Ignite and signing that, that 2-year deal for 7 figures. Does that, ease some of the concerns, because it really was unfair when guys were forced to go to college, play for free. We know how that actually works. But, now that guys can make money off NIL, that they can have agents, that they can market themselves, they can, control their brand. Does that, reduce some of those ethical concerns that we have about, why players should be allowed into the NBA at age 18?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, I talked with an agent last week about a bunch of things, and he said to me, we're meeting with 15-year-olds. Like we're meeting with freshmen and sophomores now. Like we never, and it's on NIL deals, right? Like, and it's not like,
It's like
$100,000.
baseball. I mean,
Yeah.
every
And it's
agent
like,
said we're scouting players when they're
like,
15 or 16.
I said, like, what are they looking for? Are they looking for like hundreds of thousands? No, like, hey, can we like eat at Outback for free for a year? It's like, it's like, the mindset has totally changed as far as where we were, 15 years ago, where there's more of an in for agents as far as working with 15 and 16-year-old players. It's more, upfront, right? I mean, here it is. And Drew Timmy was a great example because like he's making probably more going back to Gonzaga than he probably would have been if he was drafted in the second round. And maybe it's a comparable salary here. So things, I mean, the NIL money is certainly is a game changer here because, players aren't forced to come out if the high school rules have changed to make $2 million. Everyone's finances at home are different here, but the likelihood that these players, these 17 and 18-year-olds, have been making money since they were 16-year-olds because of the NIL money.
Yeah, definitely. The last two draft classes are, absolutely phenomenal. 2021, 2022, great classes. This upcoming draft with, headlined by Victor and by Scoot Henderson, really, really exciting. One of the big takeaways for me from this past weekend in Colorado Springs, just how weak the 2023 and 2024 high school classes are right now. This is going to be the backbone of the next two draft classes, 2024 and 2025. None of the top players looked even remotely close to being ready to playing in the NBA. And I think that was another thing that NBA executives that were in the building were looking at, saying, what is our rush here to get these guys into our buildings? Like these guys need not only 1 year of college, maybe two. Obviously, that's not going to happen for most of them. The NBA is still going to draft 60 players in 2024 and 2025. But, what kind of softened that blow and made it more interesting for teams was the classes after that, 2025 and 2026, a long ways to go, admittedly. They look absolutely phenomenal. Cam Boozer was the headliner of the camp. He's 15 years old. He's at the moment not going to be eligible for the draft until 2026. Bobby, you scouted his father, Carlos Boozer, in the 2002 NBA draft. He was playing at Duke at the time. What are your thoughts on this development? The Boozer twins are coming, and we've got some really exciting classes for us up in store.
My first thought is I'm old. I mean, that's my initial thought. I mean, going back, I mean, we were talking offline before we went on here, and I was thinking like about all these dads that are that played in the NBA. Like I picked up my first assignment when I was with the Nets in '95 was I picked up Gary Trent, who played at Ohio University, for his draft workout. And sure enough, his son, Gary Trent Jr. now is playing in the league, playing well. I think it's just, we're going to see a lot more of this, right? We're going to see we saw Kenny Martin's son, who's in Houston. We saw, was drafted in the second round, but there's a pipeline of former NBA players, high level NBA players who are going to produce, when we talked about Carlos's son, who could be the number one pick in 2026. I think that's going to be the trend to keep an eye on here moving forward. And I think just circling back to what you had said about the draft classes in 2024, 2025, not as strong. I think if you're the league, I think that you have to take that into consideration. And I think, yes, it works in cycles, right? As far as how things go. And I think you would have a little bit more you would want to push the issue more if you knew you had Kobe, Garnett, and McGrady in that draft. Like, this is the draft we want to show off high school players drafted, where you got to get it right. Like, you can't have a flop here as far as allowing high school players to be drafted in the first year are, a C level minus, type class.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing and what the teams have been told, because they have done their research regarding the potential timing of when the age limit might be eliminated and what is the first draft that this could go into effect, because they need to know this for trade purposes. A lot of teams have already traded draft picks well into the future. You've documented this very well on ESPN. But it doesn't, teams have been told that it's going to be at least 2 years after the expiration of the CBA before this goes into effect. So not earlier than the 2026 NBA draft. And that could actually be a double draft. Where Cam Boozer, after a year in college at Duke or wherever he ends up, is in the draft. Then you have these, really elite guys from 2026, AJ DeBonsa, Caleb Gaskins. These guys really put on a show for us at USA Basketball. That is probably looking like the first year that this is going to go into effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think the article, as you mentioned, that we put out, like there are, I think 9 teams that control their first round picks in the next 7 years. That's it. There are so many picks that are out when you're looking at it from, certainly Minnesota and Brooklyn and all these other teams that have, traded away their future here, where if you are going to implement this, 2026, 2027, when your picks become whole again, that's not to say like, hey, CBA is agreed upon, it goes into effect in 2024, and then you start trading away picks. Well, you already know what the rules are going to be here. But I think that would kind of replenish everyone and basically kind of put everyone on an equal playing field.
Yeah, people are going to need a heads up on this. Bobby, I want to thank you so much. This has been really informative. It's been great to be with you, and a lot to look forward to in terms of the future of the NBA based on what I saw this past weekend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.